Jeremy and the Sleagur by Will Reed. Chapter 4. A Monster Awakes. Still boosted by the audition, Jeremy flumped down next to Martin and looked at him expectantly, hoping he'd ask how it went. His friend, however, slumped over his own work, shielding what he'd done so that Jeremy couldn't catch up. Sensing the tension, Jeremy spoke first. "I'm sorry, mate. I didn't mean to hurt you." "I nearly bit my tongue off," Martin grumbled, still not looking up. "Quiet, please, boys," Mr. Parkhurst snapped, before continuing to tap on his mobile. By the end of the school day, Jeremy was itching to get home and tell Mum and Dad about the audition, and eagerly packed his bag. Whilst cramming his pencil case away, a scruffy girl came barging in, knocking over a chair, and pushed a blue envelope into Mr. Parkhurst's hand. The teacher stared at it. A mixture of recognition and surprise crossed his face before wordlessly striding over to Jeremy's desk and dropping it there. "Good luck, Mr. Deerfield," he said quietly, before returning to the front. Some of the children stopped packing to watch this odd behaviour. Jeremy frowned, examining it. His name was hard to read, written as it was in large, loopy gold letters against the pale blue envelope. But when he turned it to the light, the writing glinted and shone. It looked like something announcing a prize. An excited whispering murmured around the classroom. "Bet he's in a talent show," said one. "He's won the lottery," said another. Ignoring this, he tore it open and peered at the card inside. His jaw dropped as he read the words. "Well, what is it?" asked Martin, who'd been watching Jeremy intently. "Nothing," he answered a bit too quickly. "No, something. What is it?" Jeremy tried to shove the envelope into his bag, but Martin was too quick, snatching it from him. Golden, sparkly handwriting proclaimed, "Congratulations, Jeremy! You are our Cinderella." The word Cinderella had been written right across the page and sparkled. A look of disgust crossed Martin's face as he looked up at his friend. "You what?" he said, giving Jeremy a dark look. Some of the other children had started crowding around, itching to know the secret. Mr. Parkhurst's protests of "Settle down, please," and "That's enough," were drowned out by clamouring children. "What is it?" another child asked, and Martin handed him the note. "Don't!" Jeremy said desperately, reaching out to grab it, but it was too late. The other boy held it up in the air and cried out, "Oh my God! Jeremy's Cinderella!" The whole class went into slow motion for a heartbeat, until mocking laughter erupted. The card getting passed from hand to hand. The only people not laughing were the teacher desperately trying to restore order, Martin, and Jeremy himself. Jeremy eventually snatched the card from a nearby child and burst from the room. He bolted into the only quiet spot he could find, the boys' toilet. He darted in, slammed the door, and spotting a bolt, he threw it into place with a thwack. His face burned with shame as he marched up and down, heart pumping, and feet splashing unthinkingly in the dirty yellow puddles. The humiliation of the whole class laughing at him felt like a real punch to the stomach. He pulled a toilet lid down and flumped onto it, tears welling up, the pain doubling him over, arms wrapped around himself against the feeling of sickness. It was like a nightmare come to life. That was the moment it happened. In the stillness of Jeremy's quiet sobs and gasps, a dribble of something cold and wet dribbled out from his nostril and over his upper lip. He absently wiped it away with his sleeve. A spiderweb thin strand of some slimy substance stretched from his face to his sleeve. On it was a smear of something which wasn't snot. It was something wrong. It wasn't transparent or yellow or even green. It was a purplish green and seemed to swirl. Jeremy gaped at it in horror, sobs still jerking out of him. He felt more of it on his upper lip and wiped at it. More of the substance swirled nastily on his wet sleeve. He wondered what could be wrong with him. Was this stuff part of his insides? His upper lip felt wet again, and Jeremy could feel it dribbling over his mouth. He ran to the cracked toilet mirror to examine it. There it was, oozing out from both of his nostrils, over his mouth, and plopping in lumps and strands into the sink below. Jeremy didn't know what it was, but he knew he wanted it out of him. He bowed over the sink and blew his nose hard. 2 rivers of gunk sprayed out at a lightning speed, covering the bowl in a slimy mess. He blew again, shaking with fear that there was something really wrong with him. The slime slopped and splattered out until a particularly large, ball-like lump bulged and stretched his nostril. It was hard to get out. Jeremy had to put one finger over the other nostril for extra push. When it finally popped out, it dropped with a horrible plop into the middle of the snotty pile. It was almost like the cherry on top of a nasty bowl of melting ice cream. He looked down at the mess and shuddered. The filthy sides of the bowl slowly slipped down to join the deep pool of purple-green swirls. Then the lump on the top split open, parting to reveal a sick-looking, mouldy grey eye. It had thin black veins running through it, and whilst Jeremy watched in fascinated horror, it swivelled around in the gunk and glowered at him. He fell away from the sink and hit the floor, hurriedly shuffling away from the nightmarish creature. "Hello!" Jeremy shook uncontrollably, cowering next to a toilet. "You're very rude. I said, hello." It spoke with a slurred nasal voice through a kind of gash in the slime. Spit-like flecks of goo flew out of its mouth when it spoke. This couldn't be happening. It must all be a dream. He must still be asleep. The eye rose out of the sink on a stalk of the purplish-green gloop and peered at him. "Aren't you going to say anything then? We are sort of related, aren't we?" The voice echoed around the tiled room. Hello?" Jeremy volunteered. "That's the spirit." The creature's splat of a body wobbled and morphed, wrapping around itself and raising up until a ghostly little monster stood before Jeremy. He could almost make out the shape of the taps behind it. Its legs were mostly stuck together into one, except from the feet, which spread out like flippers. The body thinned out into arms at its sides, but it was hard to make out the difference until it reached up into a stretch. It licked its lips at the same time with a revolting, dark purple tongue. What are you?" Jeremy asked. He didn't seem to be able to tear his gaze away from the creature's ghastly face. Slime tumbled slowly down it continuously, and whilst Jeremy watched, another dead-looking grey eye opened lopsidedly nearby the first. "What am I?" it said, as it rose upright. "What am I? What am I? What am I?" It tried the emphasis on different words in the small sentence. "I'm Its arm peeled away again and scratched its head before the hand actually fell off into the sink of slime with a gloop, leaving a stump in the air. "Sleagur," it said dramatically. It performed what Jeremy thought was supposed to be a bow.
We're going to be great friends, I'm sure.
Jeremy seriously doubted that, eyeing the monster's strings of gunk stretching onto the sink like spider webs. Now that the sobs had died away, Jeremy felt a bit braver. Sleagur? He asked.
No, a Sleagur with an S, idiot.
Where are you from? The Sleagur laughed. Drips sprayed out of the sink and into the dirty puddles on the floor. One of them flew and landed on Jeremy's lip, which he quickly wiped away with disgust.
I'm from you, obviously.
It sat down, leaned back in the sink like a hammock, and played distractedly with the plug chain.
I'm from the very best bits of you. The bits keeping you safe. Keeping an eye on things, as it were.
It plucked out one of its own eyes and gestured with it, making it peer at Jeremy. He almost laughed with fascinated horror at the revolting joke. Still, how could the Sleagur be from him? He was sure it hadn't been inside him the whole time. But that voice did seem familiar. The school bell rang out for the end of school, and Jeremy scrambled up. I've got to go. The Sleagur didn't seem to react threateningly. Reassured by this, he took the opportunity, and after briefly fumbling with the lock, he dashed away. The creature sat up, craning over the sink bowl, peering after Jeremy, before giving a gloopy sigh and pulling out the plug.
I'll take the underground,
it said, and slowly rotated downwards into the sink. The Sleagur held a stubby little finger to its lips in thought, until it finally gurgled out of sight.